Tennessee This Week from WATE's 6 on Your Side starts now.
And I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self.
Hello and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Don Hudson. It's good to be with you. We're going to get into some Tennessee and East Tennessee issues in a moment, but we want to begin with the race for the White House as the Democratic National Convention comes to a close. You just heard Vice President Kamala Harris closing out the DNC with her speech and acceptance Thursday night. So we're going to break it down, and our pundits joining us today, Courtney Piper, Michael Covington, and Shelley Breeding. Thank you all for being here. So we're going to get your thoughts first on the DNC, and let's probably just stick to Kamala Harris and the things that she said. Want to just get your take on what she had to say. We'll start with you, Shelley, since you're visiting. How's that?
Thanks for having me. I thought she did a great job last night in her speech. I think the DNC as a whole showed the party very unified. You had former President Bill Clinton, you had former President Barack Obama, you had former presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. You had all the speakers, out in support, and the party was very unified. When you compare that to the Republican National Convention, they had former President Donald Trump speaking for himself. They didn't have Mitt Romney. They didn't have George Bush. I think the Democrats came out very strong in this convention, and they're riding a high coming out of it. I think Kamala Harris did what she needed to do in her speech last night. I think she looked presidential, she sounded presidential, and I think she got some votes.
Okay. Moving down the line, Courtney, your take on what Vice President Harris had to say.
I loved it. The second she took the stage and started speaking behind the podium, she had command of the room, and she had a confidence that exuded presidentialism, if that is even a word. And
it is now.
It is now. And I can't remember a time, and I'm 44 years old, where I felt that energized after a Democratic National Convention, after our nominees' acceptance speech. Like Shelley said, she did everything she needed to do. She exuded the confidence and presidentialism that comes with accepting that nomination. But she gave us a peek inside to who she is and how she makes decisions. And you could see yourself and your family and your community in her remarks. So, 10 out of 10 for that speech. And there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm coming out of the Democratic National Convention, and her communications director gave an interview with one of the national news programs and said not only are they looking at sort of that momentum and the number of people that are coming out to her events and that are engaged in the Democratic National Convention, they are looking at metrics on the back end. How many people are we getting to volunteer? How many people are we getting to sign up to make phone calls? And it's that kind of conversion that will turn that enthusiasm into votes, which is what we need to do.
And Michael, your take on it. I'm assuming you saw it a little differently, but maybe not.
It was difficult to watch, Don.
Because it was so good.
Okay, all right. The first thing that I had to interface with was that I was watching a person who has not traditionally had a great deal of positive response to her remarks. The applause and the standing ovation went on, and she just did not seem to know how to deal with it, in part because she hasn't experienced it before. Kamala Harris has not won a primary. She didn't win a primary in 2024. She didn't win a primary in 2020. There is no substance to her platform that has anything to do with policies or addressing how she wants to move the country forward. She talked hope, she talked change, she talked joy, but no substance. And so I don't think she gained any votes last night. I think she stirred her base, and she stirred it well. As Shelley said, she did a very good job at that. But I do not think she moved the needle at all, and I don't think she garnered any new votes as a result of what transpired last night.
And for everyone, if you're looking for her policies and you're looking for her agenda, like the BBC wrote afterwards, she talked about a new way forward, and she talked about ending housing shortages and more opportunities. But as they go on to say, she did not describe any specific changes in policy from the administration which she has currently served, which, of course, is, also getting, a black eye for things like the economy, for things like immigration. So how does she address those issues? Because they still haven't been addressed. I mean, it's like you said, you're using other words and you're getting applause, but how does she address when people start saying, hey, How are you going to handle the border? How are you going to handle the economy? Which, by the way, in polling, Trump leads in both of those. They're pretty tied, pretty close in overall, but he does lead on those two issues.
I think she is coming out with that slowly. We have to remember it's only been a month since she became the nominee. I don't think she was expecting that.
But she's 3.5 years.
She's been vice president, but she's had to support the Biden policies, and she has done that. She's not had to come up with her own or how that would be different from the current administration. This has all been a whirlwind for her, and I think she's slowly trickling that out, and I think we're going to see that in the next month. But at this point, to run a national campaign to become the presidential nominee in a 30-day time, do the DNC, pick a vice president, she's going to come out with it. We're going to see it, but I think you've got to give her a little bit of time.
How soon does she need to do that, Courtney?
Well, we've seen some of those things.
Because the big party's over now.
Yes, so we've seen some of those things. And first, let me say, I don't think anybody really votes for a candidate based on their policies. I really like how they're going to address macroeconomics.
You don't think people want them to address the border and the economy?
Absolutely not. Elections are popularity contests. So if you feel like this candidate is going to address the border, is going to address the economy, is going to make your life better, you will vote for him. Nobody gets in the nitty-gritty of policy details. That being said, what we heard from Kamala Harris was very high-level policy details on the border. She said she'd bring back the bipartisan deal in the Senate. In terms of families, she said that she would increase the child tax credit, go up to as high as $6,000 for a newborn. So she has given us some of those higher level policies, and I think in the next couple of weeks you'll see her start to fill it in.
Real quickly, so that Michael can get
a
word in here. Do you see it that way? Because you just said people will vote how they feel about who's going to handle the border, how they feel about the economy, and that's where Trump is winning right now.
What I would say about that is the absence of a policy, a firm policy from Kamala Harris on fracking alone, just fracking, which has such a direct tie to inflation because of the price of fuel and energy independence that we would realize under Donald Trump, but not under Kamala's policies, which flip-flop back and forth between I absolutely will prohibit fracking to, well, if it helps me get those 40 electoral votes in Pennsylvania, I'll say it. I'll say it to anyone who will listen and who will believe it. But that's not a policy commitment. And policies in that regard are very important, especially to voters in Pennsylvania.
All right. And we'll get into more of the DNC, but let me first jump into this and then we'll get into it. Delegates from all over the country were at the DNC, including 72 from Tennessee. Knoxville Mayor India Kincannon was one of them, and our DC bureau caught up with her to ask her a few questions, and here's what she had to say.
As a delegate, you don't just represent yourself, you represent a number of people. How impactful did it feel to submit your vote?
Well, last night at the roll call, it was a really proud moment. They started off to Tennessee playing Dolly Parton's 9 to 5, which is one of everybody's favorite songs. And to me, it connoted our commitment as a state and as a party to working people, which is exactly what Kamala Harris is about. So it felt like we're a small part of history, and we're hopeful that we can make history of this election.
And I know you touched on this, but how would you describe the energy at this year's convention? And would you say that everyone at the DNC has shown unanimous support for Harris and Tim Walz?
There has been incredible support for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. There's consensus. We know that she's incredibly prepared to be president. She's been vice president the last 4 years. She's had a tremendous career as a prosecutor and a state attorney general. Coach Walz has been a longtime public school teacher and a football coach and a dad and a great governor. And we think that they're going to be a great team leading our country and taking care of our country, making sure our neighborhoods are safe, making sure that middle-class families have the support they need to live their lives in a safe, healthy, and happy way. So yeah, it's a lot of consensus and unity at this convention.
And they say Harris's name was not on the ballot during the Tennessee primary.
Yeah.
Because of that, did you ever question supporting her or anyone for that matter after President Biden got out of the race?
Well, I think President Biden deserves our gratitude for leading our country through a tumultuous last 4 years, but also for having the courage and patriotism to put his country above his personal ambition. So him stepping aside was an amazing and historic thing, and it'll be part of his legacy. And I was going to be supporting President Biden, but I think Kamala Harris is an even stronger candidate because she represents the future and the next generation. So Monday night was all about passing the torch, and I I have no hesitation about Kamala Harris. I've met her several times. I've been to the vice presidential mansion. She's a person of integrity. She's ready to go. She's ready to lead our country.
And lastly, do you have a message for the people watching back in Knoxville ahead of election day?
I would just say to Knoxville that Kamala Harris is a great candidate. I encourage you to vote. Tennessee is last in the country in voting participation, so please get out there and vote. We have a great candidate and a great ticket, and we can win this not just for Knoxville and Tennessee, but for our country. Okay.
All right. We heard a lot from the mayor there, and get your reaction to what she had to say. And some of the things she did say were things like, well, Kamala Harris is prepared. She has the experience. And I don't really know how it all works when you get to the ballot thing. I'm not sure the mayor does either. It kind of skipped over that. But your take on what she had to say.
I think she's, not surprisingly, very supportive of Kamala Harris. She's at the convention. I think she's seeing the enthusiasm there. I do think she has a very valid point about voter turnout. Tennessee, sadly, I don't know why people in our state don't vote, but we need to have the voter turnout. And if Kamala Harris could get the voter turnout, I think you would see Tennessee start to shift more blue. I think you're seeing that in Knox County. But voter turnout needs to improve. Again, it's very frustrating when we see the numbers in Tennessee that people aren't voting, and clearly that's on her mind while she's at the DNC that she's talking about that.
Yeah. And Courtney?
Tennessee was, if not the first, one of the first states to delegate all of their delegates to Kamala Harris after Joe Biden dropped out and endorsed Kamala. So, you know, it's a great thing for our state to do and for our state to be a part of. And, you know, I had questions, too, when people were going back and forth after President Biden's debate with former President Trump about, you know, what are we going to do here? Does he stay in? Does he stay out? Right. And, you know, when he decided to drop out, what that meant is that those delegates could vote for anybody because the person who was on the ticket decided that they weren't going to drop out of the race. So what's been really amazing to me to watch is how everybody has unified around Kamala Harris. You did not have dissenters. There were no op-eds in big national publications saying this is not the way to go. There weren't websites and Twitter feeds that were pointing out.
There was a little of that beforehand, like maybe you should get a different candidate.
But after
it wasn't.
Rallied.
To her comment, like prepared to be president, your take on what the mayor had to say?
Well, I have always maintained that Joe Biden was the victim of elder abuse for 8 or 9 months, and Kamala Harris has always been identified as the last person in the room. Kamala Harris knew at some point she was going to be the nominee. There was no question about it. So preparedness, she should have been prepared. She was looking at the mental decline of the president of the United States every single day. So she had to have known, and she had to be prepared to be in this situation. To not be prepared with a platform of some kind that she could stand on as her own platform just seems a little short-sighted.
Yeah. All right, thank you all three. We are still have much more to come here on Tennessee This Week. In fact, we're going to be talking about the Sean Finnegan case and also the death penalty. He was given the death penalty, but there's some issues with it here in Tennessee. We'll talk about that and more when we come back. Welcome back to Tennessee This Week. On Wednesday, Sean Finnegan was sentenced to death in a kidnapping, rape, torture, and murder trial. It really gripped Anderson County, gripped East Tennessee. Finnegan was on trial for all of those things in the death of Jennifer Paxton. And her body actually discovered in an Oak Ridge home back in 2020. At one point, it had even been stored in a freezer. Prosecutors say that Paxton was lured into the home with this promise that, hey, you'll have a place to stay. That was in 2019. They also described what she endured inside of the home. Rebecca Dishman, who previously entered a guilty plea in this case, she took the stand during the trial and she testified against Finnegan as part of her plea agreement. The jury found Finnegan guilty of 11 of the 13 charges he was facing again on Monday, and then the jury reconvening to decide if Finnegan deserved the death penalty, which again was handed down on Wednesday. But here's the thing, Tennessee has a pause on executions. That's still in effect. Governor Lee, of course, ordered an investigation into the state's lethal injection protocols back in 2022. Apparently, the lethal injection drugs were not getting tested like they were supposed to. My recollection of all this, as we begin to talk with the panel about it, is there was actually some people that got fired over it. But we're now more than 2 years into this, and I'll start at the other end of the table this time, Michael. Your reaction to, I mean, this taking so long to investigate, and I'm not pushing death sentences or anything, but the investigation and getting this worked out?
We should have the information right now. There should be no reason for years to pass before we gain some type of resolution to what the governor sought. This was a very troubling situation, and if his execution is being delayed because we can't administer the drugs properly, then we need to fix that. And if he needs that justice, we need him to get that justice most expeditiously. And someone is dragging their feet, and the governor should call them out and make sure that that information is provided.
Do you think, Courtney, that this, because of this case, it now gets back into the news a little bit? I mean, it just did last week for a day or two, but will that help, you think?
It should. It should reignite the political will to look at where the results of this investigation is and why hasn't the governor made a decision. You know, if we are going to be executing people in the state of Tennessee, we need to make sure that it is being done properly and swiftly.
Right.
And it's, you know, about 2 years seems like a proper amount of time to figure out, well, what had been going wrong that caused the pause, and how are we going to alleviate that moving forward?
Especially when they say, before it all happens, they said the problem was they weren't testing. No one was saying it was wrong, they just weren't testing it. So I'm curious your take on 2+ years to look into this issue and get it resolved.
Well, I mean, I think people have to understand Tennessee's lethal injection involves administration of 3 different drugs.
Okay.
One is to have the person basically numb and not feel anything. The second is to then paralyze the person, and the third drug stops the heart. In 2022, when Governor Bill put a halt on the executions in Tennessee, there were a halt among other states as well. 2022, 7 of the 20 executions that year were what they called botched executions. You had a man in Alabama that took 3 hours to get an IV. And what I think people don't understand is you have these 3 drugs, and a lot of people believe that that first drug that is supposed to numb the person doesn't really work to numb them, and they experience things like suffocation and drowning feelings. And so that's one of the things that they're looking at. But the other thing that people have to understand is that it's not medical practitioners who are administering these drugs.
Right.
Because of the Hippocratic Oath, you don't have doctors. You also have pharmaceutical companies who do not approve these drugs for that purpose. So it's very difficult to test when there are no standards because the FDA has not approved these drugs for that purpose. So I think that there's a lot of issues with the death penalty, how it's administered, and then how do you even come up with protocols when these drugs are being used for something they're not approved for, and you don't have doctors there to work with the administration of it.
Is there any way to change that protocol, to do something differently? And again, I'm not trying to advocate the death penalty, but it's like, if we're going to have it, shouldn't there be a way to enforce it?
Well, you have inmates who are choosing the electric chair over lethal injection because of these issues. You have South Carolina who looked at going to a firing squad. You have states looking at different ways instead of lethal injection. I mean, there's different options.
And how important is it to get this resolved? I guess that'd be the big question here. I mean, it's not an everyday thing that people think about until there's a case like the Finnegan case.
Well, death row is full of inmates that may need to be executed for their crimes. We as a citizenry, we need to make sure that our government officials are doing those things that need to be done. Shelley's making an excellent point. It's problematic to have technicians doing this type of thing that aren't really medical professionals. The Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm, so you can't have a doctor doing it. Right. So we've got to find a way to make it work, and we're failing.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to other things. Still to come on Tennessee this week, TVA raising its electric rate. Some critics criticizing TVA's transparency. Our panel of pundits will weigh in on that next. Welcome back to Tennessee this week. On Thursday, the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, approved a 5.25% rate increase. It takes effect on October 1st, which means your local power bill might get more expensive either in October or maybe in November. TVA is saying this increase will generate money that will go toward generating more electricity, including the new energy complex that is coming to Kingston that we have been telling you about for some time now. TVA says this will help address the needs of the growing population, but the price increase has caught the attention of critics, such as the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy.
Unfortunately, we can't answer whether the rate increase is really necessary because they don't do an open process to allow people to really understand what they're doing.
while you do not get your power directly from TVA unless you've got some special deal going on, the utility provider, your utility provider does get it from TVA, and TVA says its increase could translate to an average of $4.35 additionally on your utility bill each and every month. So we heard just a little bit there. I want to get your reaction to, well, one, just doing it and raising it. Does that really need to be, and how transparent TVA is being about all this? Courtney?
You want me to go into it?
You look like you want to, so.
Well, energy is something that I spend a considerable amount of time in my professional career looking at, researching, being engaged and involved in. And one of the things with TVA is, yes, we do need more power. We need a whole heck of a lot more power in the Tennessee Valley because of our population growth. Driven by, in large part, a lot of employers are moving here who have great power needs. Manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, AI, computer systems all take a lot of power. So, you know, that is period, end of story. That is not debatable. What I'm curious to see is if this rate increase will actually do anything with the local power companies. So up until a couple of years ago, local power companies had to purchase power from TVA. They had no other option. And with these new sets of rate increases, our local power companies actually do not need to purchase their power from TVA anymore. A couple of years ago, TVA allowed something called a flexibility option, where local power companies, like the Knoxville Utility Board, could own or procure their own generation up to a certain point. And by all means, that program has been wildly successful. So a way for some of the local power companies to subvert these rate increases is they could ask TVA for more flexibility in their flexibility option, where they could own or procure their own generation.
Where are they getting that from? Like, say, KUB specifically, has it got putting up solar panels?
Primarily, companies have done a combination of solar and storage because solar energy is so cheap and inexpensive. A local power company can actually have a solar developer build a solar facility and get additional capacity into their system cheaper than what they can purchase it from TVA. So we've seen a lot of utilities going in that direction, and I think it would be really interesting to see how local power companies come together and try to figure out some of their own options for addressing some of these capacity gaps so that they don't have to succumb to these rate increases.
From the customer's view on all this, I mean, what should we be thinking when they say, hey, we're going to raise it, and it's going to be another $4, but that comes on the heels of other raises? How should the customers be reacting to this news and this vote?
I mean, obviously, no one wants to pay more on their power bill, and I think that you're going to see some pushback because this rate increase of 5.25% this year, but last year was over 4% at the same time, so we're at almost 10% in a year, and this is at a time when gas costs more, groceries cost more. A lot of prices have gone up in the last few years with inflation, with the pandemic. We can talk about all of that, but I do think you're going to see people upset. And again, if TVA was more transparent as to why they needed this and where the money was going, I think it would be more understandable, but there's a lack of transparency there. I do understand that they were having to build out, as Courtney said, it's undeniable that the population growth that we're experiencing and the business is coming here. But again, where is TVA putting that money? And they're not fully transparent with where they've been in the past and how they're spending that money.
So if they say, hey, we need money because we need to generate more electricity and that takes money, that's not good enough?
I don't think so. But I do rely on representatives like Representative Chuck Flashman. If he's saying we really need it on its face, I'm going to go along with that because I have a measure of trust in his looking out for the interests of his constituents and residents in Tennessee who are being charged handsomely for power as it is, and it continues to go up month to month indiscriminately. You don't even know when your bill is going to be $50, $75 more when you're not using more power. So it's just a trust issue. I trust individuals like Chuck Flashman. I trust Courtney's take on it. She works in that industry. So if she says it's something that is needed, the people that I trust, I'm just going to take their word for it and roll with it.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't like is the bill I just opened, my last electric bill. So I'm sure nobody's going to like it, especially if it's going to go up higher. But everything is getting more expensive, isn't it? Hey, thank you to our panel. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week on Tennessee This Week.
The views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or Next Star Broadcasting.